the new kayfabe in pro wrestling is just taking what people know and manipulating that to have them know, like, how real or not real is this.
Hello everyone and welcome to Drinks with Johnny live. Well, not live, but from Vegas, here with a very awesome guest. I'm here all weekend for the AEW events. We got Double or Nothing coming up on Sunday. And today I'm joined by one half of the Hardys, Matt Hardy. How you doing today?
Very cool. I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm ready to rock and roll in Vegas.
Hell yeah.
Roll the dice.
So you said you got in Tuesday night. We're recording right now on what is it, Thursday afternoon?
On Thursday afternoon, yeah. Got in late Tuesday night. We had a action-packed day on Wednesday with a Dynamite, obviously, that evening. And then today I've done some media, and then I'm here being blessed with your presence.
Oh, well, thank you for being here, man. It's really cool. I'm excited for the match coming up, Double or Nothing.
Me too.
That's going to be, I mean, that's a dream tag team matchup, right?
It really is. And there are so many ways the Bucks kind of took the style that we started, and they upped the ante in it. And they are two extremely talented kids. And it's so funny because they're so polarizing to so many of the diehard wrestling fans, you know, and there's a lot of guys who give them a hard time because they go over the top to be entertainers, and like anything that people might give them heat about or be upset about with them, they really lean into it, which also is even more polarizing to the fans,
right? Which
is so funny. And we did this big gig about calling them Hardy cosplayers nonstop, and Rampage, which is going to be on tomorrow live, which will be aired already by the time this probably is debuted. They're going to really embrace and lean into the whole cosplaying gig, and it should be a really fun night tomorrow night at Rampage.
Yeah, we're going to be there tomorrow night. Yeah. I can't wait for that. That's awesome, man. You mentioned a little bit about the Young Bucks there too. I heard you on your podcast that you just started, The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
Cool.
Talking about how they're similar to you guys, wanted to stay as a tag team pretty much the whole time, and that was like something you were talking about. Vince over in WWE wasn't really keen on that once you guys were over. Kind of wanted to split you up and have a title holder and stuff, but you guys always wanted to stay together. You talk a little bit about that and the kinship with the Bucks there? For
sure. The Bucks really do. They have no desire to be singles wrestlers. They really want to focus on being, you know, one of the greatest tag teams of all time, if not the greatest tag team ever. And they want to do tag team wrestling for the entirety of their career. And Vince, his mindset, it's always so strange. He's always thinking of the next person is going to be that number one draw, that number one act. You know, it's going to be a Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold Steve Austin or Rock or Triple H or whatever. And anytime a tag team gets over, the first thing he thinks, like, how can I split these guys off and make money off them individually? I want to, you know, establish them as one of my top guys. Yeah. And early in the beginning, he wanted to split us before we definitely weren't ready to go on our own and do singles. We're like, I don't think it's the best idea. I don't think it's the best idea. But he kept pushing forward. We ended up coming back together, and then he tried it again later. And it's just he really made that. A quest of his, I think. He eventually said, I'm going to get these Hardy Boys on their own. And I think towards, you know, 2008, 2009, 2010, we were ready to go on our own by that time. We were mature enough after having 10 years there or whatever. But, you know, being a tag team wrestler and being a great tag team has always been our goal from day one. And still, we like going out and doing single stuff, but like ultimately we want to be known as one of the greatest tag teams ever.
No, I think you're already there, to be honest. So.
Thank you.
I mean, I grew up watching WWE during the Attitude Era when you guys were kind of breaking out towards like '99 and stuff after the No Mercy, the infamous No Mercy, obviously. Yep. I guess it's just famous, not infamous, but you know. Well, that was an incredible. That was the first tag team ladder match in WWE, right?
Yeah, and that was really that was the beginning of the whole TLC movement because we had that tag team ladder match. It ended up being such a success, and I even remember Stone Cold. At the very end of the night, you know, he gave us all a beer. You know, give one to myself, Jeff, Edge, Christian. He said, all right, boys, you know, I know you guys aren't big drinkers or anything, but hell, you guys sold the show tonight. Here's the time to have a cheers to an old Steve Weiser. You know, so we had that, and then we had a little bit of, you know, we had a little bit of Vince's confidence in, and he allowed us to do the tables match with the Dudleys at Royal Rumble 2000, and then we combined everything, and lo and behold, the TLC concept was born.
Yeah, I heard you on your podcast talking about, I think it was your co-host John Alba, right?
Yeah.
He was talking about how you guys didn't get residuals on those pay-per-views afterward after they called them the table ladders and chairs matches.
No, we don't, man. we don't get any of the network money either.
Nah, that's some BS.
Vince has got it stacked in his favor strongly.
You think? Are you a fan of the Young Rock show that Dwayne Johnson's got going on?
I saw
checked it
I
out?
saw the first season of it, and I
Okay.
enjoyed that. I enjoyed
Yeah.
that, and I like Rock. Rock was always real cool. He, from beginning to end, I feel like he never changed. You know, we first met Rocky when he started doing his whole Rocky Maivia deal, when he was getting booed out of the buildings, and they're chanting "Die Rocky Die." You know, but he was always super kind to us when we were there doing extra work as enhancement talent back in the day. But yeah, man, Rock's always been great, and I'm so happy that he's achieved so much success, mainstream success.
Well, I bring it up because if you he just had the season finale of season 2, and it's starting to get into that Rocky Maivia time where he's getting booed and everything.
All
like
right.
that. So it's getting into like the '94. You guys are about to come around into that time.
Right.
You think you're going to see a couple guys playing Matt and Jeff Hardy in that show?
Maybe so. Maybe he can reenact the scene where we were on that '70s show together.
Well,
actually-
I don't know if I saw that episode.
Yeah, we actually did that. It was him and Ken Shamrock were like the featured guys, but that's before we ever got a push, before we were with Michael Hayes. It just literally hired us and gave us a little bit, so we were kind of like, you know, superstar wrestlers on the roster or whatever. But like they called us to go do this, and they needed 2 guys to go like have a match in the ring. And we got to do that, but it was cool because it was the first TV show that we ever got to work on.
How was that though? Like, what do you remember from it being the first one?
Yeah.
It's got to be one that you remember a little bit more than maybe some of the other
For
ones.
sure, yeah. It was a fun experience, and I remember too. Like the biggest thing I remember is that we had to do this match over and over again, and Jeff took like a big backdrop, and I took a whole bunch of bumps too. But like we're both invincible. We were young and invincible and indestructible at that stage of the game. You know, Father Time eventually catches up to all of us for sure.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's undefeated.
Oh yeah.
Nobody goes over on Father Time.
No one does. But anyways, you're saying you guys were taking bumps doing all that. Did you interact with? I guess you guys were just more like wrestling, but did you interact with the other actors on that show?
A little bit, yeah. Everybody was really friendly that was on the show, and it was a nice vibe, a nice environment, nice atmosphere, and we enjoyed it. It was cool because we're like, oh my God, not only are we wrestling, we have a contract, actually making a living out of this deal. Like we got to go be on a TV show.
Yeah.
So that was exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably all the original, like the big cast, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
they went through a couple iterations of that cast lineup, I think. I don't know why I'm talking about that. That's what we do. But another thing, you just mentioned, like, you guys were indestructible at the time, and I heard you talking about on your podcast, something I didn't realize, is that the rings are built differently than they used to be.
Oh yeah. When we first started, for the first couple of years, wrestling in the 80s, obviously, it was like big guys lumbering around, and they weren't taking like a whole bunch of bumps. There wasn't like a bunch of superplexes. There weren't guys doing swantons and moonsaults nonstop. They were built for 350, 400-pound guys. So the rings were super strong and solid like a concrete floor. And I would almost bet that is why Shawn Michaels ended up having that back surgery in his career, because he was a guy who took a lot of bumps, and he took all those bumps on that super stiff, hard ring. Right. And then once the style started changing a little bit, they fortunately changed the ring, and they made it where it was a lot more bump friendly. And it was a little easier to land on, especially if you're taking a big bump.
Well, how did they do that? What is that major transition from the two of them? Like, I understand you're saying one of them's harder, one of them's softer, but like, what's the technology there?
I think basically it was very simple. I think they had like long beams underneath, you know, as far as engineering goes. I'm not an engineer, obviously. I'm a dumb pro wrestler. But engineering-wise, they had these big beams, you know, and they probably had them like every foot across in the ring. So that was definitely there to make sure that the floor was stable for a 350, 400-pound guy. And I think as time went on, they maybe made them a little shorter, and they were still strong and stout, but also widened it out a little bit, so there was just more give to the ring.
Right, okay. They probably had that in the lucha circuits though too already, because those guys were already flying around quite a bit, right?
Yeah, and sometimes those rings in Mexico are notoriously hard too.
Really?
Yeah.
They just went for it.
Yeah, they just went for it. They're just a different breed animal, man.
Did you do any of the stuff down there?
I have, yeah. We went to Mexico a few times. We went to Puerto Rico. We went to Japan. All in the process of trying to make it to the big time, you know, wherever that would be. And fortunately, it ended up being WWE whenever we finally did get a break. It was real cool, man. I was even something I said in my promo last night as well. Like, you know, if the Young Bucks had to walk down the very brutal path that we had to, they would have never survived, because we do have very similar upbringings. You know, they were raised in a very Christian family. Their family's very religious. Our mom was very religious. Our dad, he's just an old school Southern man who would, you know, get up at sunrise and work till sundown. But, you know, our mom died early of brain cancer. I was 11 and my brother was 8. Oh, it's all good. And we were very inspired by her to like, be good people, do whatever. And like whenever we went to WWE, we didn't drink, we didn't smoke, we didn't do drugs, do whatever. And it's almost similar to how the Young Bucks are, their story. But it really was the wild, wild west then. And they would say, guys, the culture, the way they would haze young guys, just to make sure they're okay. Hold up, they said, if you're not getting fucked up, if you're not getting altered at all, like we don't know if we can trust you. So they kind of put the pressure on all the young guys to like do something. So we used to be good kids until this damn pro wrestling messes all up. Yeah.
So when did you say like, when did you start drinking and doing all that then? Like pretty much right out. I mean, I know famously Jeff was underage at 16, lying about his age to get that first debut against the 1-2-3 Kid at the time. What about for you? What was everyone everywhere I looked? It seems to be talking a little bit more about Jeff because he was so young at 16. But, there wasn't enough about your first couple matches and speaking on the party scene there.
Yeah, well, when we first started as enhancement talents, doing that deal, the first gig I wrestled was a live match on Raw. And I had only had about 12 legitimate matches in a regulation ring. We had this ring we did with this guy who was such a super carny when we first got introduced to the business. His name was Kenneth Morgan. Super redneck country guy, sweetheart. But he had a ring that was 20 by 20 and it had like concrete floors in it, which was literally like those old school hard rings and a trampoline in the middle. And he said, I heard you guys wrestle in your backyard on a trampoline. I think this ring would be perfect for you guys. And he was just doing stuff at like local fairs and fairgrounds. So we did some of those, and then like we met a guy who was legitimately in the business, and we started doing some regulation matches and whatnot. And then the first time I went to WWE and wrestled Nikolai Volkov, I remember Tony Gabria, an old famous wrestler, who was the agent of the match. He was in charge of our match. And it was a quick match where Nikolai was going to beat me up, but he said, I have to tell you, Matt Hardy, he said, if you mess this match up on live TV, you will never be booked again. You will never come again. Do not mess up. If you mess up, you will never come again.
No pressure.
No pressure. And Nikolai Volkov comes off and he's like, don't worry about it. I just listen to what I say out there. It's going to be very easy. He said, don't worry about it. He said, I fuck up every match. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? And he just didn't care. He didn't call anything. He didn't do anything. And I'm this 18-year-old kid, like, a guy just told me, he said, if you mess up, you'll never come back. It's like, I'll mess up every match. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, getting on both sides.
Yeah. But then once we got hired, and we were 24, 22-ish at the time. And then, first time drinking, probably 25, 23.
That was your first time ever having a drink?
Yeah. First time drinking.
Do you remember exactly what it was, where it was, anything?
When we had that beer with Stone Cold. That was the first one.
That was
the very
beer.
first one. And we said like, hey.
Stone Cold broke you.
Yeah. We said like, if it's gonna, but then there were other guys that, had other different things. And then like later on, as, before we went on air here, I was telling you a little bit like, the first 12, 13 years I had with WWE, and my back was so beat up. And I remember there was one point where I said like, I think I need time off. I had to roll out of bed and crawl to the bathtub to soak in my bed or whatever, and they just said, we really can't give you any time off. We really trust you. You're really dependable in what you do. Just go to the doctor, see what he can do to help you. And all he can do is like prescribe you pills to try and keep you go through. And that was such a culture back in the day. And like, it's such a bad culture. And that was something, guys there were working so hard and so much. It was just like they would take stuff to get through it, and like we got into that at the very end. But it was a great learning experience for me in many ways because it was where I matured more than I did in anything else in my life. And then like once I got together and like I went from being physically, mentally, emotionally, just, beat up and devastated in every way. Once I got myself back together, I really had a good hold on how to tackle life and how to deal with things and whatever. There's always going to be situations in life, and you just have to be able to, mentally stay strong, keep yourself in check, and do your thing. And I'm so happy that I went through that before I got married and before I had children. So now, like, it's the best thing ever. Like I'm living the good life.
And how long have you been married now?
I've been married since 2013, and I've been with my wife for about 12 years.
Okay, so
altogether.
yeah, so
pushing a decade.
Was it pretty quick before then? That you had this realization. I ask because I'm going through it a little bit right now myself.
Yeah.
So it's like getting to that maturity level of like, kind of, I don't know, conceptualizing that number that is our age. I mean, age is all a number.
Sure.
So you can conceptualize and go like, yeah, I can't really fuck up like that anymore.
Right, for sure. Yeah, and my wife, man, she's Puerto Rican. She's a diehard Boricua. She's from Queens, New York. So whenever she moved, the Hardy compound, which is where Jeff and I are like we hail from, but it's a real thing. We have 96 acres of land that our grandparents grew up on initially.
And you guys both live on the?
We do, yeah. We cut off. We live on opposite ends of the land, and when she first came there from Queens, New York, she said, this is fucking with me. Like, it's too quiet. She said, there's no like sirens. I don't hear the subway. There's not people beeping their horn, cussing out people because there's traffic.
Yeah,
She said, is there going to be like a Walking Dead zombie apocalypse here? Like, what is happening? But I'll tell you, once the pandemic happened, she was very happy to be there, like away from everyone, you know what I mean? But it's great. She's like embraced it. And the reason I bring her up is because I was lucky to have her. Because that's when we first started dating. Whenever I did go through my shit and I was very hard to deal with, a lot of people wouldn't have stuck by me, but she stuck by me, and she had that mentality where she will stay on your ass, and she made sure that I got my shit together. You know, so
when we're talking about getting your shit together, was it physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the above? Do you feel like it was some of the partying maybe that got in the way there too, or was it, or I mean, have you just learned to live with it, or have you remained abstinent since then from the partying life?
Yeah, I mean, I have. Since I've been married and have kids, for sure. Because now I feel like my kids are the most important thing, because I have something, you know, most people who end up making it in wrestling or showbiz or whatever, you know, music industry, you know, they feel pretty good about themselves. And you put yourself on a pedestal, you're pretty important. But like, for me, having kids, I was like, fuck, I don't matter now. Like, I need these 4 human beings, you know, to live
4
on.
kids?
Yeah, I have 3 boys and a girl.
Wow.
They're all young. I got my 2 oldest boys are gonna be having birthdays in June. So they're gonna be 7, 5, and then I have a 2-year-old, and my girl is gonna be a year in July.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a handful. And even like, you know, when I'm gone away on the road for a few days, it's tough for my wife there. You know, so she loses her mind sometimes.
Does she have any help over there?
She does. Her dad's there, and there's a house that we'd built on our compound as well, and I just let him live there. He lives there, and he just helps out. You know,
That's great.
I'll give him everything he wants.
That'd be a handful.
Yeah, it'd be a handful. And she's excited. She's coming to LA with me next week, so she's excited to go to the house. And she's got some friends in LA that she hadn't seen in years, obviously, because, you know, the world's been so insane or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, man, it was good, man. She's very tough, but she was the kind of tough person I need, and she's like really a ride or die when it comes to that. Like, she will stick with you through thick and thin.
Yeah. And like you were saying though, like having kids, I have a 5-year-old son, and I could totally empathize with that, like that idea of coming from a different world and like it doesn't even matter anymore because this is all that matters, right?
Right.
And it's like it kind of puts everything into perspective, right?
It really does.
And that's kind of an eye-opening thing too. I'm learning to figure out how to still drink with that though.
right.
Do you partake in drinking at all anymore, or is it complete?
Maybe once in a while,
you know,
but it's not an often thing at all. And
what, if you do drink, or even previous when you were maybe drinking more frequently, what's your go-to?
I was just like a big vodka, like an orange juice vodka, cranberry vodka type guy.
Okay,
you know, that would be my thing mainly. But it was like once I was a single guy, like 2005, 2006. From that year to like 2011, I was just living like a rock star, you know, on the road. I just having crazy times. And there were guys that I would hang. We had like a little group of guys that would go out and we'd party and we'd go hard every single night. So it was one of those times between being physically hurt because of the job and then just living that lifestyle. I ultimately burn out in it.
Right. Well, I mean that's a coupled thing. Like I can understand and empathize with just the being on the road part. Like, even that's just hard to deal with. But I don't have the physical problem happening as well. I don't.
Right.
Running around, it's physical, being on stage and shit. Yeah. But like, I'm not taking bumps. Let's not compare the two. So, you know, adding that to it, I could see how it would be easy to just go down that path.
Oh my God, yeah.
And the fact that it's everyone else's. I mean, and just to the point, it's like you see baseball players doing double headers. You guys are doing double headers, triple headers, like every day, and everyone gives them shit for taking steroids. I'm like, as long as they're doing it safe, let them fucking do it. They're out there killing themselves, you know, and they all gonna retire half broken, you know. So it's like, let's let them figure it out. I mean, obviously it could become a problem, especially with, you know, especially back in the 80s and 90s, the drugs that they were taking then.
Yeah, definitely.
The technology has changed quite a bit these days, at least.
And also, I think society's changed a lot too.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and I think that kind of, you know, the wrestling business, I think most entertainment industries kind of mirror society. They kind of have to change with society to a degree. And wrestling certainly has changed. The culture has changed in wrestling, you know, for the better, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you've seen quite a bit of it over the years too. Yeah. Like, so you're saying for the better. What are some of the things you're enjoying? You know, I mean, you're coming back to AEW, and came back in the middle of the pandemic. We'll get to that in a second.
Right.
But you're basically coming back to wrestling after having 4 kids. You got your compound, you got everything. I gotta imagine you don't need to wrestle right now.
Right.
So you're coming back for fun. What is it that's bringing you back, and now having your brother come over to AEW with you? I gotta imagine this is just all fun for you now, right?
It is. It's been really fun, and it is important to us to really try and cement our legacy as one of the greatest teams ever. And I think if we win the AEW, and I'm not even gonna say if, I'm gonna say when we win the AEW World Tag Team titles, that will make us the only team in history that has held major World Tag Team titles over 4 different decades. The 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and then would be the 2020s with AEW. So that's very important to us. We want to really cement our legacy as one of the greats. And then also, it's very important to me. I want my kids to be able to see what Dad does. Wrestling, because it's so crazy. Like, my oldest 2, they just think everybody's dad has like action figures. I have like a setup downstairs in my arcade, with like 200 action figures. And they're just like, okay, everyone's dad has action figures, right?
Yeah.
And it's just for them to kind of understand what I do and be able to take it in, and they get to come to shows, and they'll meet some of the young people, and it's like they like some of the young guys, which is real cool that, Dad works with. My oldest son, Maxwell, loves Jungle Boy a lot because they have like similar hair. He has long hair as well. It's kind of curly, and one of the guys liked Orange Cassidy a lot when I was wrestling with him. Said, "Why do you keep beating up Orange Cassidy? He's nice, Dad. He's nice." but that was also another reason I want to do it. And it's just something I love and I'm passionate about. And while I can still do it, I want to do it.
Right.
Because I know I have a very limited window of being able to do it.
Well, you just nailed everything that I was hoping you'd say about that, especially with the kids. I not to talk too much about myself, but bringing up the kinship of it and my understandings. I've been off the road since my son, basically 4 months old, so he's never seen me on stage before. So I'm itching to get back out there and show him
for
what
sure.
Dad does. So I feel you on that. How long was that break for you? When was the last time? To say Maxwell is your oldest, right?
Yep.
When was the last match he saw till you came back in AEW in 2020?
The last match he saw was a WWE match. They came to every WrestleMania when we were there. That was the last time I think he saw myself and Jeff. They were actually there whenever we beat the Usos for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships.
Right.
But he would do stuff regularly, and there'd be times if I'm ever locally, if I do like third-party appearances in the area, whatever, he'll always come out and hang out. And it's so funny. Him and Wolfie, which is my second oldest, always talk about, we're going to be wrestlers too. I said, I can't wait till you guys wrestle. I said, I just want to be the wheel man. I'll just drive you guys around. I'll be the wheel man. Just give me a little cut. Give me a little piece of the pie, guys. It'll be good.
Keep them clean while they're out there too.
I'll try to. I'll try my damnest. I'm not going to be hypocritical, but I am going to try and smarten them up.
That's right. Well, that's the whole thing. You don't want to say don't do this. It's there are certain trust me, I've already done it all. Let me show you an easier path to get to this way of doing it.
Yep. Just a smarter way, for sure.
There's work harder, work smarter, not harder, right?
Yes. You learn that in age, especially in wrestling.
I'll bet. Yeah. So back to your debut in AEW. How long did you guys know you were making that debut before? And then, for us watching at home, it was during the pandemic with no audience.
It was my debut was the very first empty arena pandemic era show for AEW. And Jeff, ironically, when he returned from his knee surgery, he debuted on the very first SmackDown empty arena pandemic era show as well. Shit. So it was crazy. We both had bad luck when it came to that. And for me, doing Broken Matt Hardy, he's a very audience-driven character. So I needed those interactions. I actually just did my podcast last night with Chris Jericho. We talked about the Stadium Stampede.
Yeah, you're in the water. I was watching that. I remember watching it at home going, that was fucking brilliant. He just went through every character, in the middle of the pool in the fucking Jaguar Stadium. That was amazing.
We'd had that gimmick. We built a lake for our dad. He always wanted a lake at one point to fish in. And myself and my brother, we built that for him on our property. We got a dugout. There was a swampy area, dug out, and stocked it with fish and everything. And he was very happy to have that. So when we were at Impact Wrestling doing TNA, and I was doing all the Broken Matt Hardy bullshit, we created this lake, and we did a thing where I threw Jeff in. I said, what if I even duck you underneath and we say this is magical water, because this whole place is supposed to be magical, and you can come out as Will-O-the-Wisp as opposed to Jeff Hardy, like another character of yours. And it became like a whole a whole bit in the lore of the whole Broken Universe stuff, where if you get in this lake, you can like change characters, go to a different persona, whatever. So we did that a lot.
Concept.
Yeah, and then that's what we did. Like I stocked that at the Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium. I stocked that little pool there with water from the Lake of Reincarnation, you know, in case someone threw me into it. And then I went through my characters. That was the whole bit. But it was fun stuff, and it's crazy how. Impact Wrestling was like literally going out of business when we started doing that, and then they ended up getting a buyer from Anthem, and they bought the company and still took it over. And like things happened with our contract and negotiations, and we ended up going back to WWE. But that whole run we had there, like the creative freedom and the audience they had, and the way their content that we would do from, you know, Broken Matt and Brother Nero, it would go viral like online. I remember whenever we did the final deletion, which we really didn't know what we were doing. It was like our first big cinematic match, and it kind of like started this crazy trend of cinematic matches, especially during the pandemic era. But like we were just like shooting and running, and we literally had two people doing it. It was Jeremy Borash and a guy named Jimmy Long. And then there was two other guys. One guy's writing notes, one guy's doing audio, and we shot it throughout the course of the night. We were just kind of making it up as we went along. It was a really, really small crew. Like people were blown away at how few people did that shoot. And then I remember after it aired on TV, it did the biggest number they'd ever done on this Pop TV or wherever they were. And I remember telling them, like, God, you guys should upload this because like it's so polarizing, but it's getting a lot of buzz online. You should upload it, and they didn't. And then like over the course of the next week, multiple people did, and there was like 3.6 million views here, 4.2 million views, just people, and then they end up pulling them down or whatever, or like, you know, getting, you know, they get the sponsorship money from those guys. And they put it up like a month later, but that was like a month too late, you know what I mean? Because it was one of those things that was a viral concept, and that's what made that whole Broken Matt Hardy thing work so much. And that's what ultimately got us rehired at WWE, because they knew that was buzzing so big.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get into the WWE versions of it too, but I'm glad you brought up that one specifically. I was going to ask, how many drones did you go through with Jeff hitting them?
It's so funny. Those things that Jeremy Borash had some old drones, and he had a couple that were broken, and those are the ones he just sacrificed. Okay. And those were all, like a lot of people thought, like, was that CGI? Just no, like literally Jeff, he was flying these drones in his house, and he was smashing them with this, you know, breaking the hell out of them, man. Those were fun shoots. We broke 7 drones that day, I know, and then Vanguard 1, we probably went through 7 or 8 of those.
But, 7 or 8 of them?
Yeah, but just between like flying them and just crashes or wrecks or whatever the stunts were. And you know, and Chris ultimately killed Vanguard 1 on the AEW show, with Floyd the Bat.
Yeah, I remember. We'll talk about Chris. I want to talk more about your guys' conversation for your podcast in a second, but I wanted to ask about something you just touched upon. You said you guys on that last TNA or Impact compound match you put together with Jeff. You said you guys were kind of just doing it by the seat of your pants, kind of like. So were you guys like? I'm asking more on the technical side of it, behind the scenes.
Yep.
Were you taking breaks in the middle of the matches and then coming back to like the lockups, like in the same? You're like, oh, this is where we were. We have to come back into that, or was the match itself just kind of filmed several times and you pieced it together? Or did you actually take breaks? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, we did. Like you said, we filmed the match a couple times from different angles, and like one time they shot up and they got the drone, and then they got a couple different cameras, whatever. But we pretty much did the whole match through like 1 or 2 times, but we didn't like, you know, cut tape and then like drop down and then start again or whatever. Okay. We just kind of did the whole match through. But then different scenes, like when we go to different locations, we'd obviously like, you know, cut camera and then reset and do whatever and move it around. And it almost was like, you know, like a movie set would be. Yeah. You know, in theory.
And do you, now, as you said too, like you guys were ahead of your time, because then it came out like that's just how they had to do a couple of those bigger matches during the pandemic, obviously. When you're doing that, are you directing a lot of it, or is it the team that's kind of, or are you just predominantly worried about the wrestling and then you're leaving them to the movie aspect of it, or are you getting involved in the movie aspect of it too?
I did. We had a really good system. Jeremy Borash, if you're familiar with that name, he's a guy who did commentary at TNA, and he was a major force behind the scenes. But he knew everything really well from a production standpoint, video standpoint. And I would just say, like, this is kind of what I see in my mind. I would like to kind of get to this, and he would suggest the best ways to shoot it. We would like literally sit back and just kind of like storyboard it in our minds, you know, how we would do it, and then we'd kind of run and gun as far as stuff went. But yeah, I was really into like being on the production side of stuff, and it was cool to like learn stuff about that too.
Is that kind of how you got the Stadium Stampede? Is that kind of how that went for you guys as well?
It was.
Just you and Chris getting together, or who was all involved in putting that one together in the same vein, obviously?
Chris really took charge on that one, and
Okay.
he was even there. We were talking about that the other night too. Actually, we did that shoot, and we started at about 9 p.m. and we had until like 5:45. We were doing fireworks at the very end for the celebration for the baby faces, for the good guys, and the fire marshal said like, you have until this time, and then it has to be done. And we were like rushing. We had a 90-minute thunderstorm there, that we had to stop and do whatever. We couldn't shoot because we were actually in the football field. And then it's funny, there's a point in the match as we were watching back, you can see like where they're fighting outside. Then one point you look back and like everything kind of seems wet. Like obviously it looks a little different. It didn't keep total continuity. But like Chris was so on top of that. And whenever we just barely beat it, we got those fireworks in with like 90 seconds to go before the fire marshal was going to shut us down, and no fireworks was going to happen for the celebration. But like he went back and slept for like 2 hours, and he got up and he got in the truck and started editing, because they had to turn it around for that next night because we shot it the night before it was going to air. So they had, they had to do the edits and get it down and then upload it and get it to the truck for the satellites. So it was like we were rushing on that. It was a last minute thing.
Wow. So do you see yourself maybe doing some more of that stuff in the future? Just not because out of necessity anymore, but like to your point, you guys were like, you and your brother kind of the first ones doing it through the pandemic. It's gained a little bit of popularity and a viral sense to it.
Right.
It seems to me that there's going to be an audience for that kind of match.
There is.
And do you see yourself doing some more of that just for fun? I mean, I don't know. It seems like, to me, it would be like a fun way of doing something you love differently.
Yeah, for sure. And I love it. And I feel like you have some diehard wrestling fans that like, if pro wrestling isn't sports centric, then it's not right. But I mean, come on, pro wrestling is entertainment when it's all said and done. Like, they go, well, this is like, if they do it like a movie, it just looks so fake and so phony. Well, I hate to tell everybody, but when you throw a guy to the ropes, he's not automatically going to come back off the ropes too. You know what I mean?
You just broke everything that I grew up knowing.
You know what I mean? It's just accepted that they will do that. So it's one of those things like you can't deny that pro wrestling is entertainment in the big scheme of things. And like, it's been over 20 years since the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars, where the curtain was kind of like pulled back a little bit and people kind of understand what's going on. And in this day and age, we're in the age of the internet, the age of information. Everybody can look up whatever.
You don't have mystique in any entertainment anymore.
No,
I'll tell you
right.
from the music industry.
Right.
It's very hard to maintain mystique.
And in all honesty, the new kayfabe in pro wrestling is just taking what people know and manipulating that to have them know, like, how real or not real is this, whatever the situations may be.
And I think that's the new psychology of wrestling, right? Like, I mean,
definitely.
So it just seems like, and as a wrestling fan from the outside, just like watching it and stuff, I love this new psychology behind it too, because as you said, it is tied loosely or closely, depending on the story, with real life, and I feel like that's something that it brings back that, like, oh, is this real? Or is it not? How much of this is just a fabricated story or what? And it brings back that allure when I was a kid and was, my brother told me that it was all fake. Sorry to use the F word. And I cried. So.
I mean, there was even, and I feel like it was good for AEW Rampage last week. There was a thing where Bryan Danielson had his leg stuck like between the ramp and the ring, people were like freaking out about it. And I got some people that did text me like, oh my God, is Bryan Danielson all right? I was like, what? And they saw video on the internet where people that were at the show like, oh my God, Bryan Danielson fell and his leg got trapped and they couldn't get him out and he was in there for 15 minutes. I hope they're not gonna have to like take off his leg or whatever. But like, it was one of those things where like literally his leg slid in there and then he just worked it the whole while. And people, it's as real as he makes them believe it is, And he's a master at doing that.
And that's so cool, and it's such a cool time as a wrestling fan because of that, because it's bringing back that questioning of like what's real and what's not. I absolutely love it.
I do too. Hey, that's the new kayfabe.
Yeah, I didn't know the term. But.
Yeah, manipulating information that people really can't be sure of the validity of. That's the new kayfabe now.
No, I love that. I mean, for me, I love the in-ring work. And I heard you talk a little bit about this too. Like, you felt more comfortable when you had like a storyline, a character to play. Jeff, more of the high flyer guy and stuff like that. You felt more comfortable like that. And that's the kind of stuff that I gravitate towards as a wrestling fan. I don't get me wrong, I love a good match just for what it is in the squared circle. But I love the storyline. I love why it's coming to that point to get in the ring.
Me too. Me too.
And I think that's something that I've always been a fan of you being able to do, and reinventing yourself a couple of times.
Oh, thanks, man.
over
Thank
and
you.
doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest and transparent. The Broken Matt Hardy stuff, it was the funnest year of my life. You know, just that stuff was so much fun. It was over the top. It was outrageous. You know, it was borderline campy, absurd, but it was just so much fun.
I love that stuff though. Like I know the hardcore wrestling fans tend
Right.
to like,
Yeah.
But yeah, and they all have a voice now too, by the way.
Best thing about social media, it gives everyone a voice.
Yep.
Worst thing about social media, it gives everyone a voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mean, but I love wrestling, but I'm not one of those ones who's super critical of
Right.
what I'm watching. I'm watching for that entertainment value. I love some of the campy stuff. I love some of the over-the-top stuff. I mean, back in the WCW era, I loved Disco Inferno.
Yeah, right.
It was hilarious.
Right.
But you said like that was some of your most fun times doing that. That I understand that was kind of what brought you to AEW. You had a contract extension up in WWE, as I understand, and you decided you wanted more creative control. Is that pretty much what it was?
Yeah, I realized how I had many conversations with Vince towards the end, and I just said, you know, like the few years I have left to do this, I really want to do it. You know, I love doing this, and I want to do it while I can. You know, I want my kids to see their dad do what he loves or whatever, so they kind of understand, you know, what I do. And Vince, in his mind, he was just said, well, that's fine. I can use you as a talent, but like how I really see you, I would like to use your mind. Because I think you've got a great mind. You know, I'd like you to be a producer and be a coach, and you know, help these guys put their matches together. You know, teach them psychology. You know, keep their storylines moving in the right direction. And he said that over and over and over again. And at the end of the day, they offered me some great stuff. Like they put me in an angle with Randy Orton right before I left, and and we got real hot. And ultimately, Randy like kind of killed me off. How they wrote me off the show at the very end. And then, you know, Vince, he said, are you leaving? I said, yes, I am. You know, I'm just going to go wherever I can wrestle. And he said, well, I respect the honesty. A lot of people try and bullshit me or whatever. And that was great, very straight up with him on that. And I just knew how I went to AEW, especially because I was close with the Bucks and buddies with the Bucks. I talked to them and started talking to Tony some. And then they were just there to really kind of like let you make your own music or paint your own picture, so to say. And that's what's been such a blast about it. It sucked. It was unfortunate for me that Broken Matt Hardy started when the pandemic happened, you know, and just the world kind of shut down. So it was a weird time for that character. But, you know, we did course correction and got everything back on track. And now just having Jeff here and being able to do the Hardy Boys, you know, again, it's the best thing ever.
Dude, I think it's the best thing for the fans right now, too. Like, talk about the AEW tag team division right now.
Oh my God.
It is so fucking stacked.
It is so fucking stacked. No joke, man. I mean, when you look back at all the teams that are just, you think of like, usually when you think about a tag team division, because Vince isn't a big tag team wrestling guy, you know, he didn't see it as a main event, but you know, AEW treats it as a main event. But you know, you have the Hardy Boys, you know, you have the Young Bucks, you have the Lucha Bros, you have the Jurassic Express, which is the champions, FTR, which they're killing it right now. They're white hot right now as baby faces. And you know, the teams go on and on and on and on. I mean, it's the 20 or 25 teams deep, the tag division, and they're all great quality teams.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've never seen a tag division like that.
Yeah.
And I've only watched, I'm not going to pretend, again, I'm not one of the hardcores that watches a lot of I've only watched most of the majors, right? And I mean, to your point, WWE, WCW never put a lot of emphasis in those tag team divisions. I mean, except for the Outsiders for a short time. But then, like the rest, it was like the Outsiders and then everybody else, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In WCW, but then to your point, like, I mean, it seems like they're kind of trying more of the tag team stuff in WWE now. I've seen, you know, the last WrestleMania, there was quite a few tag team matches that were featured pretty heavy. But I still think, like, going back to it, it's just AEW is just stacked with great tag teams right now.
And I think just AEW being here and making sure Vince isn't a monopoly on the marketplace is such a good thing. And I think that has forced Vince and his team to kind of step things up as well. Because I feel like he kind of got complacent, especially those 20 years where, you know, after he, you know, bought WCW and absorbed it, you know, he just, okay, well, there's no competition. People are going to buy my stuff, whatever. And I think it's just good, not only for the industry, but good for all the talent and the fans as well. Because, like, I feel like this year's WrestleMania was one of the better WrestleManias they've had.
Well, I would agree.
And AEW has made them step up their game, you know, because they don't want AEW to catch up with them. And it has made so many insane strides, and AEW's done so many great things in 3 years. They know that, you know, there's competition looming, you know, so Vince is getting his act together.
I completely agree with you. I think competition is a good thing in this, and not even that it's a direct competition in a lot of respects. There's not the head-to-head shows anymore. They've moved that around and stuff. But not only that, it's to me as a wrestling fan, it's two different styles,
Totally.
really. I
Totally.
mean, and yes, for stepping it up, I mean, you could clearly see WrestleMania was such a big, as I said before when I was watching it, I was like, that's just a big flex. Like,
Yeah.
they went out and did a big flex. They're like, okay, this is who we are. Remember who we are, okay, people? And I think they did a great job. Like,
Yeah, agreed.
But I am glad that there is that push, you know, and it's easy to see why you get complacent, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
He has a monopoly on it, and it's kind of, and he's, you know, we talked about Father Time, you know.
Yeah.
It's catching up to Vince, too.
Sure.
He's probably going like, well, I'm just going to rest on my laurels at some point.
And on top of that, I mean, he's working on, you know, he has $3 billion deals,
Yeah.
you know, with the SmackDown network rights and with the Raw network rights, and then they sold over all the network stuff to Peacock. I mean, each one of those deals were $1 billion deals.
Peacock needs to up their game, by the way. I'm tired of that. Like, it's not very user-friendly.
I hear that nonstop.
Yeah, it's just, I mean,
It's a
I
very
love the idea of
common
having
thread,
a
yeah.
network. Like, especially, I got the WWE network before it went to Peacock. Loved it. I was going back and
Yeah.
catching up on stuff that I like, nostalgic.
It's
and
much
stuff I hadn't
easier to
seen
navigate,
before.
too,
Yeah,
right?
it was. They got to fix that, guys. Fix that. Anyways, they also got rid of a lot of the Attitude Era stuff. That bummed me out.
Yeah.
I digress. I like that we were talking a little bit about business side of this stuff, though, because I don't know a lot about it, obviously, as an outsider, but again, on your podcast, The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, to listen to it and subscribe right now, you talk a little bit about the monetary gains and business side of stuff, too, on that podcast. And I found it very interesting. One of the first ones was how little you guys got paid for that No Mercy ladder match.
Yeah.
And where that goes. And can you talk a little bit about the industry as a whole, where it's at now, monetarily, business-wise, as compared? I mean, we go back to those Monday Night Wars. It looked like wrestling is the biggest thing in the world, mainstream everywhere.
Right.
It's not necessarily mainstream to everyone outside of wrestling. Like, I mean, at that time, you had guys on talk shows, Saturday Night Live,
Yeah.
everything like that. They were hosting everything. They're not maybe in that forefront, but it seems to me the business is much bigger than it was then in a lot of respects.
It's definitely more profitable,
Right.
especially because of TV rights, because wrestling has just been a proven commodity, you know, to TV stations. And that's why, like, even last night, we've been going up against the NBA Finals and the NHL playoffs have been happening. You know, we were still the 6th ranked show last night on TV, which was cool for Dynamite.
That's huge. This time of year, that's real huge.
Yeah, especially this time of year against that diehard competition. If you remove those things, we're going to be in the top 3 every single time, and that's a company once again that's 3 years old. I mean, like, I can't put over Tony Khan enough with how many strides he's made over the last 3 years. It's been truly incredible. But when it comes to monetary purposes, I think there's a lot more opportunities for guys to actually make money now, because the business, much like all businesses, are so diversified. You know, and you were talking about how it's not really mainstream, but there's just like this niche now. Like, you know, if it's like, you know, music, there's a niche, but then there's all these different things you can do around it. And I feel like with wrestling, it's like that as well. And especially the way Tony has this great mentality where Vince, when you work for Vince, he might book you on third-party appearances and you get a little piece of the pie, but you don't get it all. But, like, you don't get to do your own stuff. You know, there was a time where he even, like, you know, took cameos away from people that would do that for a couple extra bucks. And then he said, well, they'll go through WWE, you'll get paid on it like a royalty. Or Twitch, for instance, too, when guys are making that. But I just feel like now, you know, on top of working for AEW, whatever you make there on top of your salary, you can still do third-party bookings and go to cons or go to, you know, independent shows or whatever you want to do. So there's so much money you can make extra, and then you can do things like Cameo or Twitch or whatever it may be. There's so many different outlets to kind of make money, and I just feel like the world has changed where pro wrestling is like not necessarily a mainstream thing right now. Hopefully one day there'll be some star that comes along that has like mainstream appeal, like a, you know, a Rock or a Stone Cold or a Hogan. You know, I feel like Wardlow is a guy who might have that possibility here at AEW.
Yeah,
I think he's very special. He's a good-looking dude. Chicks love him. He's super athletic and talented. But, like, you have a guy like that, and hopefully that does, you know, elevate the view of a company and kind of their status where they can grow and become more mainstream or whatever. But wrestling has its niche, and those fans are always going to be loyal. I don't think they're going to, you know, they're not going to leave.
No.
And it's also one thing, like, wrestling just has been proven. If you have a good product and you do it over and over, people will tune in, they will watch it, and it's always going to be, it's a proven draw for television.
I've been tuning in since I was 3 months old, literally. So.
I mean, yeah. I mean, same here since I was a kid. You know, I was just lucky enough to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the niche, and I want to go back to what you just said right there in a second. But real quick, when you're talking about the niche, I think it's important to point out, like, niches can be gigantic these days. Like a fan base. Like the common thing is if you can get 1,000 fans, you could get 100 million fans. You know, it's like the way that you can build things now.
Right.
You know, there's plenty of articles that people could go find on this. You know, and
right.
you know, if you get 0.01% of the population, that's a pretty big chunk of people.
Yeah, right.
But I want to go back to your introduction into wrestling. You said since you were a kid, like what was it like growing up? Who were your heroes that early on, and who were you seeing on the TV when you were watching?
The first guy that stood out to me was the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh yeah.
You know, he just had this over-the-top personality. He had these super flamboyant robes he would wear, and his finisher was a flying elbow drop off the top. So it was super exciting, you know, and we were very much drawn to that. So he was the first guy I was really attracted to. And then Ric Flair, it's hard not to be a Ric Flair, Four Horsemen fan. Yeah. If you're in the Carolinas too, you know, especially when they're from Charlotte.
You know,
that's 100 miles down the road from me. So I dug those guys, even though they were the bad guys.
Oh,
and that's primarily what was on the TV for us, you know, like NWA and WCW and that Mid-Atlantic stuff. And we would watch it and it seemed more real. It was like, this is, a lot of the wrestlers they're like your dads. You know, like in the backyard, they will like whip your ass, and it's like real, and they'll beat you up. Then you watch WWE, and it's like kind of glamoury and glitzy and much more showbiz. There was a huge difference between those two.
Right.
That is what initially drew me to it, and then at WrestleMania 4, myself and my brother, we made bets on who was going to win the title tournament, and I ended up betting on Macho Man, and he won. And then that was right after the Andre the Giant thing with the title, where they had the Hebner twins, and you know they tried to screw the title. You know, Ted DiBiase tried to get the title off Hulk Hogan, and just that whole storyline, then Macho Man winning, that totally drew us in, and I never missed wrestling after that day.
Yeah, man. WrestleMania 4. I was actually at WrestleMania 2 when they did the simulcast.
Oh,
so I said 3 months old.
That's super cool, yeah.
I was 3 months old at the time.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I mean, I totally remember the matches. No, I love that you brought up like the Carolinas, you know, being right down the street from Flair. And obviously, I was a huge Four Horsemen fan too, even though I loved all the baby faces in the WWE, but when I would see the Four Horsemen, it's just something so cool about that.
Just so cool, yeah.
Just so cool. Well, before we hit the record button on here, we were talking about a little Ric Flair.
Right.
The big news is that he's going to be doing his final match out there in the Carolinas, and are you going to go out and watch? You're going to be ringside. You're going to I don't know, jump in there maybe.
Maybe this is going to be a Starcast event, which is Conrad Thompson. He's like the godfather of all podcasts.
I love Conrad Thompson. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him yet. He was supposed to come on the show. Still coming after you, Conrad. But yeah, I listened to him and Eric Bischoff on 83 Weeks regularly.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, Conrad also, his whole podcast network is where The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy airs. You know, it's with him. He'd reached out to me and came to me with the project, and that's how this all kind of came to be. But there is definitely talk of us going out there and maybe doing a signing, and maybe I do a live podcast and maybe even involved in a match in some capacity. Who knows? Maybe I could even end up in Ric Flair's last match.
Wouldn't that be incredible, though?
It would be a pretty cool moment, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his mic work, everything that he did over the years, just. We talked about bumps with like HBK and stuff. You got to see HBK obviously took a lot from him. And just taking bumps in general, Ric Flair's like the OG of that.
Oh my God, yeah. Whenever we did WrestleMania, I think it was 22, and there's a Money in the Bank, and Ric Flair was in that match. And there was one point where he wanted to take a big bump. He had to take a big bump, like he was going to be gone, but he's going to try and come back. It was kind of like the story we were telling in the match. And he said, well, I want to do this. If I'm going to do a big bump off the ladder, I'm going to do it with you. You're the guy I trust. I know you'll take care of me. You'll keep me safe, whatever. And then we'd kind of determine where we were going to do the suplex from. And he was going to be 2 or 3 rungs down on the ladder. And we got up there. We were fighting a little bit. I'd grabbed him, and I was going to suplex. He said, no, higher, higher, higher. And he wanted to go up, and he was said, higher, higher, higher. And he went up like the next to the top rung before I suplexed him. And we went all the way down. People were like, oh my God, I can't believe Matt Hardy just suplexed a 57-year-old nature boy in this ring. And it was like, this maniac is the one who wanted to do it. He called the spot, and he kept saying, higher, higher, higher.
Wow, is he? So he's just intense like that in the ring,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the party life. Obviously, you've been a little closer with Rick over the years. Like,
Yeah.
How many beverages have you shared with the infamous Ric Flair?
I've had quite a few. Yeah, I've had quite a few back in the day.
What's one of your favorite nights with him? One that you could tell.
Yeah. Well, one that I could tell. Whenever we were doing TNA, there was one night where he was down and he was buying rounds of drinks for the whole roster, and everybody was down at the bar hanging out, whatever. And he came through and said, "Woo, another round! Here we go, guys, let's go!" And then he went and he'd taken his credit card. He'd only had one there, and he went and did it, but it was declined. And he came up to me and said, "Woo!" He said, "Hey, Matt, can you take this for me? I know you got plenty of money." He said, "Just cover it. I promise I'll get you back." And he, "Woo!" And he walks out, but he said all this, I was like, it with the bill, I'm still waiting on my money back.
He hasn't paid you back? So, well, now we have an angle for that last match. You got to go get your money back.
Oh my God.
Oh man. Well,
his years of entertainment were well worth that.
Yeah, absolutely.
At $1,200 or whatever it was.
Oh, that's how many guys were there for that?
I don't know. It was there were probably 8 or 9 guys down there, and they all got a couple rounds.
Then.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's not that bad. Like 8 people or something.
Yeah, right.
8 or 9. You guys did some work. Well, I appreciate your time, Matt. I really do. Lastly, I just want to ask you a little bit more about. We were talking a little about some TV shows, and I know with young kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's hard to get in those shows.
Very much.
You said you just got caught up on Ozark.
Yeah, I have one episode. I have the very last final episode left of Ozark to watch.
All right. Well, no spoilers. I'm like way behind. I think
Gotcha.
I'm like on season 2.
Okay.
But,
it's been good. It's an intense show. It's good.
What are some of your other favorite things, like outside of wrestling? Some shows, some movies? Because I want to get caught up, man. I'm watching all cartoons right now.
Right. I see plenty of cartoons at home too. My TV ends up on Nick Jr. all the time.
Nick Jr. man.
It was cool because whenever I was working and I was just wrestling nonstop from like 98 to 2010, 2011, there were so many great shows that came out. And I just recently, over the last couple of years, went back and watched these things. I got to catch up on, I watched 24 with Jack Bauer, all that from beginning, which was a super cool concept. The Sopranos, and I understand why people hold that in such high regards now.
I've still never watched a single episode.
Yeah. I just went back and watched it. I watched The Wire.
Okay.
Also The Shield.
So it seems like all these shows you're saying are very FBI cop related and stuff like that. Would you say that's a genre or investigative?
I like kind of
detective.
Yeah, kind of True Detective. That's also something, especially season 1. Yeah,
season 1 was
really season 1 was great with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. But then I also like a big fan of Dexter. I enjoyed True Blood. I enjoyed Game of Thrones. It was a little disappointing at the very end. I felt like a lot of people kind of felt that way about it because there was such a great investment. Everyone got built up through the season and whatnot.
That's hard though. I mean, like
Super
to build
hard.
a storyline that has a great finale. If it's so great, the expectations are up. This is another reason why I waited for Sopranos this long and other shows is I can't handle when people hype stuff up and then because I'm always let down.
Right.
Like,
right.
I want to go in not knowing anything and I'll be excited. Lower my expectations.
I mean, that's one thing I say. I say it to my wife all the time too. I say unrealistic expectations will always be met with disappointment.
100%.
And that's one of those
Why
things.
do you say that to your wife? Is there some?
She has high expectations sometimes. I just trying
Of you specifically, or
no, just things in general. Everything has to be good. She's a perfectionist in many ways.
Well, my wife has way too high expectations for me, and they're still down there.
Right. Yeah. I try and keep mine as low as possible. I want to look super successful.
And that you are, man. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Looking forward to the pay-per-view. Looking forward to hanging out with you again sometime.
Yeah.
Man. Really appreciate it.
For sure.
Your time,
Thanks, man. Thank you. It was a pleasure, man. It was so much fun.
Absolutely, man. So everyone go check out the podcast, The Extreme Life with Matt Hardy. And that's it. Till next time, as always, cheers.